started working for the family business while I was in college. I was originally thinking to be a music teacher. I was teaching 25 guitar students a week. Realized that that wasn't going to be my future. I was working for Martin. My dad had volunteered my services. They needed a sales rep for the New York area, and they paid me $10 a visit to visit the music shops. It was a lot of fun. Plus, I learned so much doing that because I got to go in the stores and I got to befriend people like Henry at Manny's and Jerry Ash at Sam Ash. Jerry was like a mentor to me. He would stop what he was doing and sit down and talk with me, and I learned a great deal from him. The biggest name was still Black Diamond, which were really horrific strings. They were terrible. And it really kind of puzzled me because I would go to the trade shows with my dad from when I was 13, and I would sit at these GAMA and Guitar Association meetings and listen to these people and I'd go, man, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. The guitar companies all had brands of strings, but nobody ever really devoted the attention to the string and accessory side of the business. And there was this opening for someone who would be innovative to say, hey, I'm going to focus on strings and accessories and really make something better than what's out there. I was trying to make my father's products he was trying to sell with his name on them look better. And I went to a printing show at the New York Coliseum, and I convinced my dad to spend $4,000 on a press, told him I would learn how to run it. And I used to run the printing press and print stuff a little better than what they were getting. In fact, this is probably one of the labels I printed myself. And those were like some of the basic designs Janet would do with me. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just teenagers. The two of us handled all of the graphics and the design work. Janet and I were married in 1970. And we had 2 drafting tables in our living room in our apartment in West Hempstead. So at night, we used to do graphic work, and during the day, we did business work. Also went to night school and learned package design and typography from School of Visual Arts, which I loved. And I was handling the printing shop, which I had built out, and I had 3 or 4 presses now, and we were printing envelopes offset, and they were really looking pretty good, and we were printing all the packaging for our private label customers and doing a really nice job on it. I would start to get more and more involved in the advertising work of the whole organization, and eventually became the advertising coordinator for Martin. And Janet was doing some bookkeeping and graphic design, and so Darko office was me, Janet, my dad, and my brother. That was it. There was no other people. It was 4 of us. And we ran that division. And Frank Martin, who was a very smart guy, one time, sometime in the early 70s, we were in a bar after a sales meeting and we're having a drink, and I asked him why Martin only has strings and they don't have any other accessories, because their brand name is so strong that we should have Martin accessories. And he says, well, just do it. So I went off and I made a Martin accessory line. I sourced the capo from Dunlap. I sourced the peg winder from Dunlap. I sourced straps from Jerry Freed. I sourced picks from a local plastics molder in Pennsylvania. The bridge pin package, though, it looks like the little bowling pins in the plastic box, I designed that. And it's November 1972. Go to the sales meeting and ready to present what I worked on, and my boss stands up and presents the whole thing, takes credit for the whole thing, doesn't even thank me. And I just had a baby, just bought a house. I went home and Janet and I were talking, and I said, if I'm going to do that kind of stuff, I'm going to do it for us. Why do I have to do it for somebody who isn't going to appreciate it? And she said, well, just go for it. Let's do it. And, she always supported what I was doing and gave great advice. She was really a great sounding board for me. She was more of a people person and a listener than I was. She was a pretty good judge of character, and she knew that we weren't going to be happy long term staying there. And I quit my job. So it was November when I just had the impulsive, gut, intuitive feeling that we could do this ourselves. We don't really need to have someone else do it with us or for us. We could do it for our own family. In February 1973, Janet and I incorporated J. Daddario and Company as a printing and marketing company because we had earned some Martin stock as a bonus, and they didn't want to keep the in-house print shop, so they swapped the stock for the printing equipment, which was mostly used stuff that I bought very cheaply and refurbished myself. We moved it to a 2,000 square foot storefront in Limbrook on Long Island, And we did quite a bit of work for other people because we had come up with a way of offset printing the difficult guitar string envelopes at a super high quality. And we had 4 presses printing guitar string envelopes. We used to print 5 or 6 million a month. And Ernie Ball calls my brother John, because John was running the string factory, and he says, "Who's printing your packaging for you?" It's great. And he says, "Oh, my brother does that in Limbrook." And I get a call from Ernie, and he says, "You have capacity? You're interested in printing some envelopes for us?" And I said, "Sure." And he sent me the artwork for the 010 custom gauge, the red border package. And I printed 10,000 samples for him. And I didn't hear from him for weeks, so I figured he didn't like them or whatever. I had a post office box, and one day I go there and I pick up the mail, and there's an order for 600,000 envelopes, from Ernie Ball. And then we printed envelopes for Ernie Ball for many, many years. And we printed envelopes for Ian Omari and GHS even for a while. Tons of other string companies. So the printing business was actually doing pretty well. I had borrowed $5,000 to set up the factory and was able to pay it off in like 8 months, which was great. That was the way we got started. But without Janet's help and support, and she worked literally side by side with me every day. The printing was kind of the first entree into a vertical integration for Darko and became the foundation of this company, basically. I was kind of bored. I wanted to be back in the music business. It was in my blood, On New Year's Eve, I called Dad and my brother and I said, "Well, Jan and I are going to start making strings again. You guys going to come?" And we all agreed that we would jump into this thing and get it started. We borrowed some money from my brother John's father-in-law because my father had a stellar reputation. He used to pay his bills most of the time by return mail. A lot of the vendors, including one of the machine builders, said, "Don't worry, we know you're good for the money." Hudson Wire Company, one of our main suppliers, National Standard, another one. They said, "We'll send you the invoices, just put them in a drawer until you have the money. We know you guys will be good for it." And that taught me how important your vendors are to you. I always tell everybody, and my grandfather used to say the same thing too, the people that make stuff for you, they're more important than your customers because you can't make anything for your customers without the right vendors. And then my brother and my father joined Janet and I, and it was a really pretty dynamic team because there was lots of different talents there. Everyone was pitching in and we overlapped, and sometimes, you overlapped and to help out when somebody was behind on another thing or whatever. My brother was really good at operationally handling everything about the business side. And John really was the backbone of that effort because he knew all the suppliers. He gathered the specifications and he was very detailed oriented. He typed everything up into spec sheets. Back then we only had typewriters, no computers, right? He was really instrumental in handling some very, very crucial things like placing the right quantities of orders for the right things at the right time. John was kind of the face of the sales effort out in the marketplace. And my dad as well. My dad was a phenomenally good salesperson. And Dad never really was a stockholder of this company. He did not want to own stock in this company. He let John and I be 50-50 partners. So it was a great compliment, yin and yang kind of thing. People used to ask us how we split our responsibilities, and I used to say, "Well, John handles today, I handle tomorrow." Janet was the first artist relations director. She used to handle any requests from artists for product, and the both of us were really kind of the face of the company in terms of going backstage. My dad was pretty good at it too, but he didn't go to rock concerts. And Janet had a kind of personality that really was appreciated by the artists. She would listen to them and she had a great musical ear. So when we talked music to them, they appreciated the fact that we knew what we were speaking about. And I was in the back designing machinery. I just focused on keeping the factory and the machinery running. I was always a tinkerer and a builder of things and used to make speaker cabinets and amplifiers and all kinds of stuff when I was in high school. And I, really took to studying the string winding machinery and trying to figure out how it could be better. So I started planning the string factory, ordering some machinery because we didn't know how to make machinery yet. We ordered string winding machinery from the only sources that were really available in the United States. And one of them was Amelia Vinci in Brooklyn. And he had made various machines for both Ian Omari and for Darko strings from Dad. He was not a craftsman, so there was no science or consistency from machine to machine to machine. So the original machines that Darko started with were hand winding machines from Italy and Germany. that my grandfather and my father used in the past, and they ordered more of those, and they trained people to wind strings by hand. And he made some automatic winding machines for Darko that they had just purchased, and there were all kinds of problems running these machines and keeping them running at Darko. But we didn't have a choice. We didn't really know where else to go and get machines, and we certainly didn't know how to make them ourselves yet. So we ordered 6 winding machines from him. We ordered 2 manual ball ending machines that were like tables with semi-automated spindle, and the operator did most of the work by hand. Simultaneously, we also ordered machinery from a manufacturer called Bowers Machinery. And Bowers was the opposite of Vinci. The machines were quite precise. And he made automatic winding machines, and he said he can make an automatic ball machine. It was $30,000. So it was a very expensive machine. And, we didn't know much about controlling the specs of the machine order, right? Like certain tolerances of the length of the twist, for instance. So this guy just made this machine that fed a ball end, fed the wire, and it made a nice twist, but it made a twist that didn't have a lock on it. The twist was almost an inch long, which was unacceptable. We would come up over the saddle on an acoustic guitar with bridge pins. And he made this machine and shipped it to us, and he made 4 winders. The winders I thought were excellent, but the balling machine was completely useless. It didn't really work consistently. I asked him, how do you adjust this to make the twist shorter? And he said, you can't do that without remachining some of these blocks. I said, okay, leave the machine here. I'll figure it out. I'd take the whole machine apart and I had to machine blocks and move things forward, and not sure it was going to work, but I didn't have a choice. We needed production. And I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of an opportunity for me not to teach other machine makers how to make great machines for strings. And that was kind of how I got started learning the real nuts and bolts of what this machinery did and what it needed to be more perfect. And it was far from perfect at that time. I was able to get that twist nice and short and make it exactly the way I wanted, and it ran great. And over time I figured out how to make all the replacement parts, the jaws that were expensive. Then I realized that most of the time, if we figure out how to do it better ourselves, we don't really need to share that knowledge with anyone. And we never patented any of our machine ideas, because that's like blueprinting what you did for your competitors. We just figured that all of that would just be trade secrets of ours, and we'd try to keep them to ourselves. The next thing I needed was, I really wanted to have a lock twist, which is the twist we have now with a spiral at the end, right? It has like tightly wound twists at the end, which is something that Fender and GHS and Ernie Ball had. The machines we were using from Vinci, they made a nice tight twist, but they didn't have the lock on it. And then this guy from Bowers Machine said, I could build you another machine now that could do the lock twist, and he sent me some samples of it, and the twist was shorter and it looked pretty good. And we ordered one of those machines, and it was like $60,000. I get the machine at home, and of course it doesn't work. So it's the same routine. Take it apart, rewire it, learn it. And I would just try to find people that could teach me about the things I didn't know. That was a process of learning exactly how to make these machines better, more reliable, safer, and make a more consistent product. And one of the really, really big problems was controlling the tension of the wrap wire, which is like, to me, particularly on a guitar string, is the most important variable that you have to control. So when the spool is full, it's this diameter, and when it's empty, it's that diameter. So as you can imagine, the tension goes up like 3 times as the spool empties. You got 2 completely different strings, or hundreds of different strings just from one spool, because the tension is actually changing as you're using the spool up. So I made a great dereeler, and I isolated the tension, and I applied the tension on a consistent diameter capstan. Now I had the same exact string from the beginning of a spool to the end of the spool, and my competitors didn't have that. So you'd gauge their strings and they'd be all over the place, because the wrap wires are soft temper and they stretch. I could take the wire for an 053 string, and I can make an 050 out of it if you want me to, just by jacking that tension all the way up, and it'll be nice and stiff. I was like so excited, because this was like a huge breakthrough. These machines were pathetic. And when you go online, you see a lot of factories and they show you machinery. You see that stuff that I rejected in 1977, they're still running it. So I didn't even think twice about it. We just always reinvested. If we came up with a great idea, I would want to put it on every machine in the factory right away. So I re-outfitted every machine with the right tension controls, rewired every machine. From that point on, we were in a class of our own. There was really nobody that could say they made a string as consistent as we did, because they couldn't.